All right, this is the
This meeting is being recorded.
June 11th, July 11th NAC meeting, and we are having a presentation by Peter Van Nortwick as well as Alishia Topper, who are the Assessor and Treasurer of Clark County. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for your patience in letting me get that set up.
All right, thank you, Marilee. I'll say I'm Peter Van Nortwick, Clark County Assessor, first elected in 2010. I guess a little bit about me personally. I'm a fifth generation Washingtonian, raised in the Seattle area, attended the University of Washington. In my free time, I coach football at Thomas Jefferson Middle School. So far, we've won back-to-back championships. So I coach linebackers. I also have 3 children and a new adopted daughter from Spain that we had last year for a foreign exchange student, and I'm hosting her sister again this fall. And like I say, I've been the assessor. So what we're going to talk about tonight, what Marilee wanted us to talk about, was first a little bit about the senior exemption program, and then a little bit about assessments. And then when I'm done, my partner, Alishia Topper, I'll pass it off to her, just like every year I pass the assessment role off to the treasurer. So I will start sharing my screen here. All right. You guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So this is the introduction to the property tax exemption for senior citizens and disabled persons. It is a tax reduction program exemption passed by the Washington State Legislature. It is run by each of the county assessors in the different counties, and it's done under the guidance of the Department of Revenue. The purpose of the exemption is to allow senior citizens and/or disabled persons the ability to age in place. And so that's kind of the purpose of the program. The exemption program freezes the assessed value of the applicant's principal place of residence and reduces the tax amount due based on the applicant's level of income. The property taxes are reduced. The applicant does not have to repay those taxes. There's 2 programs. There's an exemption and a deferral. And a lot of times people get confused. A deferral is basically the state pays it and it's a loan to you, where the exemption is you just do not have to pay the property taxes back. The other thing is this is a tax shift. The senior exemption program is a tax shift. It means that the taxes that aren't paid by the person on the senior exemption program does have to be picked up by the rest of the taxpayers in the particular tax district. And so because it is a tax shift, our office is very strict on making sure that the people that do get the senior exemption program do qualify for it. So the qualifications of the program, first one is age or disability. The applicant must be 61 years of age or disabled by December 31st of the assessment year in order to qualify. The ownership requirement, the residence must be owned by the applicant by December 31st of the assessment year. For example, you have to own by December 21 to receive the discount in 2022. The residency, the home must be the applicant's primary place of residency and must reside in the home 6 months or more each year. There is an exception to that, and that is that the applicant's in a nursing home, assisted living, or adult family home. In those cases, they could still qualify for the senior exemption home, even though they're not there, but it has to be their primary place of residency or someplace where they are being cared for. The income level, they must have an annual household income of $50,348 or less, and that includes both taxable and non-taxable income is included, excluding a VA disability. And I won't go into that too much tonight. If you want more information about that, my staff can help you out with all the ins and outs of any particular situation. So there are levels, income levels. There's 3 levels of income. The first level is $34,856 and below. And on this one, I'm going to actually click through all these because I'm going to start at level 3 because I think it's easier to start at level 3. But in all of them, remember the value is frozen. But on level 3, and that's for people that have an income between 42,000 and 50,000, 348, they are exempt from the excess levies and the state schools part 2. So excess levies are those levies that were voter approved. So like school districts, I think they're called enrichment levies now, they're exempt from in the state schools part 2. So you get your value frozen, and then you're exempt from the voter approved and the state schools part 2. As you move down in income level, then you get more benefit. So on level 2, which is between 34,800 and about 42,600, then you get from that frozen value somewhere between 50 and 70,000 off of the assessed value of the home, which means that then that starts reducing the regular taxes. And the regular taxes are, say, the county general fund, the city taxes, some of the fire districts, library taxes, those sort of things. So then you start getting further discounts off of regular taxes. When you get down to the lowest level of income, you get even more off of the assessed frozen value of your home. Again, you still don't have to pay any of the excess levies, but you're getting exempt from 60% of the assessed value of your home. So that does greatly when people come onto that program. A lot of times people will see their taxes cut at least in half, a lot of times even more. So if you do know any seniors that are eligible for the program, I definitely recommend you reach out to them and you reach out to my team. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about tonight was assessments. And there's a lot of confusion around assessments and what it means for what they're used for and what it means for property taxes. But one of the basis of assessments in the state of Washington is the first thing that a lot of people don't understand is we are required by state law to assess homes at 100% of market value. We're also required to assess property at its highest and best use. And I'll just give you a quick example of this. Let's say you have a house in 5 acres, and that could be the highest and best use for a long time. But if you're taken into, let's say, a city or something, and the zoning changes to where you can use 10,000 square foot lots, suddenly the highest and best use of that property was no longer a home on 5 acres. It may be a subdivision property, right, where you basically scrape the home and make it a subdivision. If that value is more than the value of a home in 5 acres, we are required by state law to assess it at that value because that is the highest and best use in the market. We're also required to assess all properties in equity. That means we have to, those properties that sold and those properties that didn't sell, those properties that have homes on them, and those properties that are vacant, we have to value all those properties in equity. So a lot of times people get their tax bill and people notice, wow, my land value went up a lot, and maybe the house value may even went down. People are like, what's going on there? Well, it's because the vacant land sales are rising faster than finished home sales, and as land becomes more and more rare to be able to find those parcels, you're going to find that the land values are going to increase because the ones that have vacant are vacant, and the ones that have homes on them, we need to start from that position and make sure that we have the same value on each one, and they need to be at market value for the land. Also, when we assess, we utilize what's called mass appraisal. A lot of people are familiar with when they get an appraisal on their house and someone comes out and they look at it and they measure and they do 3 comparables. What I describe mass appraisal is what we're really doing is valuing the characteristics of your house. We're not valuing your individual house. So we have to take all the sales that happened, all the market sales that happened, analyze them, and come back and identify characteristics and what the value is of those characteristics. And then we have to apply it equally to those homes that sold and those homes that didn't sell. And a lot of times people say, hey, I didn't do any changes to my house while my assessed value went up. Because the sales happened, we analyzed it, we said the characteristics of your home, those values have increased in the marketplace. We also have to assess per IAAO standards and under the RCWs of the state of Washington. And we do so under the direction of the Department of Revenue. So we don't really, as assessor's office, really have much leeway in what we're going to do, because we do have professional standards that we have to meet and that we're measured by the Department of Revenue, and we are audited on it every couple of years. And every year we have to send in what's called a ratio study, where the Department of Revenue looks and says, how close to market value are you valuing your property?
Peter, may I interrupt for just a moment? And you can tell us what IAAO, I assume it's the International Appraisers Association,
Oh,
something?
International Association of Assessing Officers, sorry.
Okay, got it, thanks.
So I want to just talk about the tax formula. There's kind of two basic tax systems that you'll find in property taxes. One, Oregon taxes, which those are what are called value-based. And that's actually what everyone seems to think that our tax system is. But in Washington, we have a budget-based system. But in the value-based system, you have an assessed value, and then it increases every year, usually by percentage, and they have a fixed rate that they apply. So if their assessed value goes up 3%, correspondingly in that type of a situation, their taxes are going to go through 8%. We don't have that in Washington. We have what's called a budget-based system. And in a budget-based system, there's a pretty simple formula. You take the tax district budget, you divide it by the total assessed value, and that gives you a tax rate. So what is the impact of higher assessments? And this is usually why I get called in, is because people got their assessment notice and values greatly increased. And one of the first things that happen is people call into our office and say, hey, I got this higher assessment notice, you're jacking my property taxes, how much of my tax is going to go up? Well, in a value-based system, it means you're going to have higher property taxes. But in a budget-based system, what higher assessments means is that you're going to have a lower tax rate, because the tax district budget is actually separate from what we do in the assessor's office. There's what's called the highest lawful levy in each tax district. And a tax district would be the city, the county, the different fire districts, school districts have their highest lawful levy. And if you ever go out and vote for a school district levy, you'll notice that you're actually approving the exact dollar amount, let's say 32 million. One year, maybe 34 million the next, maybe 36 million the next. That money, that 32 million that you're voting on, is actually the highest lawful levy that the voters are setting for that. And so when they send into us that tax district budget, that $32 million is going to go on the top line. And that's the amount of money that Alishia is going to bring in property taxes, whether assessed values increase or decrease. We are bringing in that 32 million. So it's the tax district budget divided by the total assessed value equals the tax rate. And the tax rate changes every year. So I just had a couple of examples over here. If you have 1 divided by 2, right? The tax rate would have to be 0.5. If it was 1 divided by 4, it would be 0.25. And that's just really simple. I think we all remember that basic math, but that just shows is really as the total assessed values increase, the tax rate, which is over here, is going to decrease. And if you take a same look, if the budget was $1 million, and the total assessed value was $2 million, right? You have a 50% tax rate. And if the budget was still $1 million, but assessed values doubled to $4 million, then you're going to have a 25-cent tax rate. And because in a budget-based system, what we're trying to do is taking that, in this example here, the $1 million, and trying to figure out how to divide it amongst all the different taxpayers in equity. Just really quick, this is the contact information in the assessor's office. This is my direct contact. If you're interested in the senior exemption program, you can go to taxreduction@clark.wa.gov and the telephone number to reach them. And then so Once I do all that assessment stuff, I get the budgets in from the tax districts. I then take that and I pass it off to my partner, Treasurer Alishia Topper.
Thanks, Peter. And I'll go ahead and share my PowerPoint real quick, and then we'll open it up for questions. So property tax assessment is the first step in creating the tax roll. So once Peter, as he said, has determined that all the budgets that were submitted by the school districts, fire districts, the cities, the ports, every taxing district has to submit that budget to Peter. Once he's certified the value, he'll hand it over to me. And that gives me the exact dollar amount that I need to collect for the year down to the penny. So in 2021, for a comparison, we billed $795 million in property taxes. As you can see in this chart, the county's portion for the general fund was about 9.7% of the property taxes billed. County roads was about 5.6%. If you look at school districts, they were about 34.1%. And it's a little skewed because if you look across to the blue portion of the pie chart, you see state at 27.2%. The state is asking us as a local government to bill and collect state schools tax on their behalf. So I act as an agent of the state. I put a line item on the bill that each of you receive, and that's for the state's portion. So schools are actually 27.2% plus the 34.1%. So they are receiving the largest share of the property taxes billed. And then of course we bill on behalf of ports and others, which is about 2%. Cities and towns are receiving just about under 11%. And our library is collecting 3.3%. That includes both capital and operational levies. And then the fire districts are rounding it out with another 7.3%. So it's not necessarily that a single individual taxpayer will be paying this exact percentage. This is as a whole across the county. How much are we paying towards each of these service areas? So if you break that down, I decided to use my property tax statement as an example. So this was my 2022 first half property tax statement. I was billed $5,448.40 for my property taxes. I paid approximately 35%, almost 36% to Vancouver School District. The affordable housing levy with the city of Vancouver was about 2%. And as you go down the line items, you'll see that there's the capital facilities for the library. There's the state schools 1 and 2, Clark County 8.9%, and then all the way down to mosquito control, which gives a great service, by the way, it's 0.1%. If you were to look at how that was accumulated, my school support this year for property taxes was 63.2%. So 63% of my tax dollars went to support schools. I gave the county 8.9% of my $5,448. And of that total amount billed, 39.19% was voter approved. So that had nothing to do with the county council, the city council, the port commissioners, the school district board members. That was strictly me and my neighbors deciding whether we wanted to tax ourselves to support specific projects. You can see a breakdown on your property tax statements, which I find helpful for myself to see year over year kind of how my levy rate has changed and how my tax amounts have changed. So if you flip your property tax bill over, on the back side, we have this little comparison chart. The top portion is voted levies, and then below that is non-voted. So the non-voted is where it was the budget set by that elected body. The voted levy was the ones that you and I voted on and decided. So as you can see, my property taxes for the non-voted portion down here increased by 14% this year over last year. But it's important to note that my assessed value this year over last year increased 26%. So to Peter's point, just because my assessed value went up 26% doesn't mean that my levy rate and my taxes went up the same. So you'll see here for Clark County in 2021, I paid 96 cents per 1,000 of my assessed value. And then in 2022, I only paid 88 cents. So my levy rate went down because my assessed value went up. And that was a 7.66% decrease in my levy rate, but it was an increase of 13.27%. So it is a little bit a little bit awkward to think that, well, my assessed values went up, so my property taxes are going to go up equally. But to Peter's point, we are budget based. That district cannot collect any more money than what their budget stated. So if my value goes up, my rate likely will go down. And so that's kind of the quick thing. How much do we bill? Who's getting the money? How do we know how much we're paying based on our rates? And I'm happy, and I know Peter's happy to answer any questions. And I guess I didn't introduce myself. Alishia Topper, Clark County Treasurer, elected in 2019. I am a Battleground high school grad, Amboy Middle School, North Clark County girl, live in downtown Vancouver now, married to my husband Ryan for I think 16 years, and I have a lovely cat named Sir Humphrey Hillary. So that's about me.
Alishia, question, this is Kirk. So Clark County is limited to like 1% or so in increases, but it looked like yours was 13% increase. Can you tell us more about how that difference is?
Yeah, I can talk to that, Kirk.
Sure.
Because that's really comes to the levy limit. And the 1% property tax limitation is based upon each taxing district.
Right.
And so, so each taxing district, if they brought in $100 in property taxes this year, next year they can bring in 1% more. If they want to bring in more than that, then it has to be approved by the voters. And there's something I think that a lot of people don't understand, and that is to really understand what does the 1% mean for Clark County. And you know, if you go out and you do the math, taking the 1% in Clark County, what is the impact on your property taxes? Out of $100 bill, if you had a $100 bill, you're talking about a dime. And so a lot of times people want to go and talk to their county counselors about holding the line on property taxes. Really, the county council doesn't have a lot of control over the level of property taxes. The voters, the state legislature have much more of an impact than county councilors will ever have on, you know, property taxes. So, you know, like I say, is if they had voted to take the 1%, you would have basically seen a dime different per $100 in property taxes. Yes, Kurt.
So Peter, so hers, Alicia's went up 13 or 14% to Clark County. What am I missing there?
Well, probably what happened is that because we're a budget-based system and we assess an equity, Alicia's property values probably increased more than someone's else. So if across the board people's value went up 10%, but your value went up 20%, then you're a bigger percentage of the pie. So it would then shift onto you. So that is one thing, is that when we are doing assessed values, as things change, property values are always shifting. And say under state law, the limitation on property taxes is not on the individual, because we're required to assess 100% market value. The limitation on property taxes is at the tax district level, not the individual taxpayer level.
So I have a
And then
follow-up on that, if I may, and then I'll be done. And that is, you know, when houses sell, a lot of times it's because the person put $25,000 to $100,000 into it to improve it. And yet I didn't do that, we'll say, to my house, but yet you're assessing my value as if it were improved like that. What's your comments on that?
Well, because we do and I said earlier, we do mass appraisal.
Yeah.
And so this is hard to kind of get the concept, is in mass appraisal, it doesn't actually matter if you're accurate. It matters if you're equitable, right? So if all the properties are valued at 50% of value, but everyone's equitable at 50% of value, everyone's going to be paying about their fair share of property taxes. And you know, the thing is it is true, you know, that a lot of times when people sell, they'll fix it up. We do go and look at sales. We have access to the RMLS data. And if we say, hey, wow, this one was really fixed up, we can change what's called a home's effective age or its quality. And we do that in order to kind of make those adjustments. But, you know, a lot of times mass appraisal isn't good for a house that's a great over improvement in the neighborhood. Let's say you got a 5,000 square foot house and it's a neighborhood of 2,000 square foot houses. The model's just not very good at that, and it's also not very good at the other end. It's really more based upon, you know, kind of the cookie cutter approach. And so, you know, and we also, because we have IAAO standards, we can only make adjustments on those things that we can determine market value for. So there may be some differences between houses, and we also know that maybe it drives value, but if we can't back it up, we can't go in and make those adjustments. So the point is really not to be 100% accurate on market value, but is to value the characteristics and do it in equity so that we're dividing the property taxes fairly based upon the characteristics.
And Kirk, one thing I tell taxpayers when they call my office and they have that question, they feel as though their home was overvalued. There is an opportunity after you receive your notice of value to appeal. And so there is an appeals process in the state as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a couple. Peter, when you talk about mass appraisal, is that countywide? Is it by neighborhood? Does it vary in areas of the city and the county? How do you break that out?
Yes, we do break it into neighborhoods, but we also break it into age and quality and style of homes, right?
Okay.
And so what we'll do is, you know, because different types of things have different cost to build and also different value in the marketplace. For example, a one-story house costs a lot more to build than a two-story house. It's also a lot more desirable. You'll see they'll sell much more per square foot. And so what my team will do is analyze and say, okay, based upon the sales for a average quality one-story home, this is what they're selling for per square foot. For the 2 stories, this is what they're selling for per square foot.
Yeah.
And we'll analyze that across the entire county, come up with those numbers. Then what we do is we have different neighborhoods that we go in, because we look at what's kind of the geographic area, what are the competing neighborhoods in this area that people are buying it, that are looking together. And then we take that model and then we look at the neighborhood and say, how does it compare to what we're actually seeing in the neighborhood? And then we just adjust that model. So maybe in the Sherwood neighborhood, we look at the model and go, oh, they need to be at 120% because they're selling for more. And maybe in Fruit Valley, we go, oh, you know, they're only selling for 80% based upon the model. And so we adjust it down. And then maybe on Battleground, it's like 150%. So we'll adjust it. In Camas, maybe it's at 200%. And so we adjust. So we take all these different items that we analyze, and then we adjust them based upon market.
So when people say that something like I don't know, supported campsite, City of Vancouver's homeless supported campsite is in the neighborhood, and when they say that's going to affect my property values, it would actually take at least 2 or 3 years for that to reflect in an assessed value for property tax purposes.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bridget, because the way the property taxes work, like this year you paid your 22 taxes, and Alishia sent you the bill, I think it was in March, you paid your 22 taxes. That's based upon the 2021 assessment that we would have mailed out beginning in June 2021. That's based upon the sales in 2020. Because the way that things have to work is, first, all the sales in a year have to happen. So all the sales had to happen in 2020. So once 2020 and those sales are done, then my team starts going in and analyzing those sales. And we do that really for the first 4 months of the year, analyzing those sales. Then we get the tax rolls ready to, you know, mail out all the assessment notices. And then people have a time to appeal. And then, you know, after that time appeal is done, we do certify the assessment roll, pass it over to the treasurer's office, and then they collect, you know, property taxes.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
You said it was budget based in Washington.
Yes.
Is that the county's adopted budget or some other budget?
Every taxing district that collects property taxes in their budget has a line for property taxes. And so that has to be passed in a public meeting. It usually happens in November, is when they're doing their budget hearings. It comes out, it's an exact dollar amount. That dollar amount then is certified to the assessor's office. We take that dollar amount, we divide it by the total assessed value for that particular taxing district. We come up with a tax rate. We take that tax rate, we apply it back to each property based upon the assessed value. We create a tax roll, we pass it off to the treasurer. The treasurer sends out the bills to be collected. And so, when people call and say, well, assessed values went up, what's the impact of it? It just means the tax rate is going to be going down because we won't need to have as much per thousand in order to bring in.
Yeah, I just wondered how much influence council had on that, but
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
interesting, Bridget, because we in the treasurer's office generate what I call a universal statement.
Yeah.
So it's one single statement that has a bill for every taxing district within the area where you live. So if I live downtown, I'm in the Port of Vancouver's taxing district. I'm in the Vancouver School District's taxing district. Then I'm in, the county. So
Yeah.
it keeps building and building, and every single one of those little districts has to pass a budget. And
So-
even though it's on a county logoed piece of paper, it's not the county's funds.
Yeah, so Bridget, because your last question, how much impact does the county council have? As I said, them voting for the 1% is like a dime per $100 bill. In other words, it's almost no impact whatsoever that they have on property taxes.
But
The
they can
voters-
go up to 3%, right?
No, the most that they can vote is 1%.
Okay,
What did I say? Which is 1/10 of 1%.
And it's not 1% of your tax bill, it's a 1% increase to their budget,
Yeah,
right.
not your tax bill.
yeah. So like I say, for the county, because it's about 10% of the budget, you're talking about 1/10 of 1%. And like I
Sure.
said, it's a dime out of $100. So
Now,
very,
Peter
very
didn't throw in there because it does there's a little bit more nuance. And new construction, when Peter goes out and certifies new construction, that does add budget capacity to the district where the new construction was built.
I do have a question.
Sure.
I'm not sure which one of you would answer better. So hey,
Hi,
you keep
Alishia.
saying,
Just
saying that
Sativa,
the
can
assessed value doesn't.
everybody please, when you ask a question, state your name and your neighborhood for the benefit of our guests.
Okay, I'm Sativa with Maple Tree neighborhood. So I'm just trying to, so you're saying that raising the assessed value lowers the tax rate, but then when they re-request, like for right now, like our fire levy is down to like 80%, 80 cents. By having a higher value, they're able to then re-request a bigger budget. So in the end, my taxes will still go up.
Okay, so what you're talking about is when the fire district goes out and to vote, and I think you had a fire district person on your probably is doing it. That is the one time where it does matter, because when the fire districts go out to vote, they are able to reset. So for example, when the people of the city of Vancouver just voted for the 50 cents per thousand of tax rate, increase, they do get to apply that by the total assessed value. So the increases that we just had in assessed value, yeah, that is going to greatly increase the highest lawful levy for the city of Vancouver. But it is a situation where, that was approved by the voters. It's only in those instances where voters go out and prove that type of environment that where it does greatly increase your property taxes. It takes the voter approval.
Yeah, and it isn't based on like a levy rate gets so low where it's an automatic increase. I mean, their levy rate could have kept dipping and dipping and dipping, and their budget would have stayed at the 1% increase max per year. But now they were able to generate 50 cents more per thousand because of voter approved.
Yeah, but like every time the school one comes out, they always say it's not going to affect your, because the rate's going to stay the same. But if your value is doubled, it's very much going to affect you.
Okay, so I mean, there's something really to understand when you're talking about school districts, And that is when you actually see the levy in the voters pamphlet. You're actually approving their highest lawful levy. So they'll sit there and say, it's 30 million, year 2023, 32, 34. And you'll notice over there where they talk about the rate, they'll say it's an estimated rate.
Mhm.
And, you know, and I'm not saying the school districts don't say, hey, we're not raising your property taxes because we're keeping the rate the same. In a budget-based tax system, as property values increase, the rate goes down. And you can't collect, for example, if it went from 30 million to 32 million, $2 million more from the same tax base without the property taxes going up. But it's not the assessed value that's driving the
Yeah,
property taxes. It's the fact that the voters approved 30 million one year, then 32 million to collect the next year, and then maybe the next year 34 million. So, you know, that really comes down on to understanding exactly what it is that you're approving and understanding that they're going to collect $2 million more, regardless of what happens with assessed values. Property taxes are going to have to increase by at least $2 million.
And not that this is a question, but we will entertain more questions. We set our time aside this evening. But just from a finance perspective, Washington State has such a strong bond rating, and so do our local governments, because it's such a stable source of funding and one of the primary funding sources for the general fund, which are mostly police services or fire services and public safety. So even though a lot of us don't like property taxes, they are a very important part of our financial structure in the state.
Before you go away, may I ask Peter to clarify something? And I'm quite embarrassed to actually let you know that I don't understand this. Peter, I wrote down that you said it costs more to build a single-story house than a two-story house. How's that possible?
Well, when you have a single-story house,
Yeah.
you have foundation under the entire floor. If you have a two-story house, you only typically have foundation under half the floor.
I get it.
The
I get
floors
it.
are on top. Then you have roof, right? They need to only be half the size.
Yeah,
So
I
a
got it.
one-story house, it takes the most land, it takes the most materials, it is the most expensive to buy. It is the home which, what we say, has the highest utility.
Thank you very much. I apologize for a dumb question.
Not a dumb question. Do we have any other questions for either Peter or Alishia? If not,
Think
then I
not.
would like to thank you
That's
for
good. Thank you very much.
excellent presentations, good
Thank you.
responses.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right,
It's
thank
fun.
you for having us, yes.
And check out the Property Information Center from the county's website. It's a wealth of knowledge about your own personal property. If you pay by mortgage, you can still get your property tax statement there, and all of Peter's notice of values and information is on there as well.
And
Thank you
also,
all.
if there's property tax increases, you can go into Alicia's tax distribution and you can see exactly what tax district led to that increase in property taxes. So, thank you, everyone. We'll see you later.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Thank
Stay
you.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, now we'd like to have Chief Kristen Maurer from Fire District 6. Can you tell us a little about yourself and then give your presentation?
We're going to deal with Shawn Newberry, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks, Shawn.
Hi there. Of course. Thank you for having us.
Shawn, yeah, sorry about that, Shawn.
No, that's all right. So Chief Maurer had planned to be here, but she had a last minute opportunity to join her college age daughter on a little getaway. So you got to take those opportunities when they present
Absolutely.
themselves. So my name is Shawn Newberry. I've been with Clark County Fire District 6 for 24 years, and I'm an assistant chief. Chief Maurer and I were hired together. And so I've been through a number of the positions in the fire district, and all the way from firefighter through company officer, and then into the operations division, and now I'm in the logistics section. So I've seen a lot. Interesting that we're talking about taxing We we rely on the citizens of our fire district to pass both fire levies and EMS levies. And 'tis the season, I suppose. So Fire District 6 has a both fire levy and an EMS levy. The fire levy, of course, provides funding for all of our fire services, the fire engines, the fire stations, the fire side of the business. And that's a permanent levy. Occasionally we come back and ask the fire district or the district citizens to renew that levy or up that levy back to the level that we were talking about with Alishia and Peter. But right now we have an EMS levy, and the EMS levy is a little bit different in that it expires, whereas our fire levy does not expire. And so every 6 years, the fire district kind of gets a report card from the citizens within our fire district. And we go back out and ask them to renew the levy, because without the levy, it would expire. And then the funding for our EMS functions would go away. So the EMS levy provides funding for our paramedics, our EMTs, our medications, our equipment, EMS equipment, and all of the things that go into about 80% of our calls. So it's a very important component in our budget. It definitely keeps a very important part of our function running. And without the support of our fire district, which I know is just a few of your representation here, keeps us going. So call volume is increasing year over year. Of course, with COVID, it was even more expensive to protect our employees and to run even more calls. I know that was a bit of an anomaly, but in addition to our EMS levy, we've also been able to ask the federal government for some funds to reimburse some of those expenses. So we didn't hit our citizens 100% with those increases. That was helped out by the federal government as well. So 87% of our calls are EMS calls, and with the county growing as much as it is, our call volume increases year after year quite significantly. Last year we ran 8,353 calls compared to just a few years before, which was about 7,100 calls. And of course, we expect that to grow in 22 and years coming. And so the levy that we're requesting now, as I mentioned, is not a new levy. This levy goes back into the 80s. Chief Klein, who was a participant on this Zoom, was there when the first EMS levy came into effect. And since then, we've gone back every 6 years and asked the community to support us with a replacement levy. So as the old one expires, we ask for a new one. The maximum allowable is 50 cents per thousand, and we have continually asked only for 45 cents per thousand, as we feel that we can pay the bills and keep up with the demand with 45 cents per thousand instead of going to the full 50 cents per thousand. So for a $400,000 home, which I know is a little bit low right now, it's about $15 per month for those services. So if it doesn't pass, we will have to reevaluate, but it does pay for all of our paramedics and our EMT certifications and the medicines and equipment and things like that. And so we just have to reevaluate how we're going to do that, or if we're going to do that. But we've always had a very high level of support from the community, and in all the neighborhoods that we serve, our passage rate is quite high. And I think that's because of a good partnership that we've had with the community over decades, quite honestly. So that in a nutshell is what the fire district is facing right now with our EMS levy. I did want to share with you how, if I have just a minute or two more, is what we've done with the last fire levies that the public has provided us. We told the citizens of the fire district that we would increase our safety and health for our firefighters. our training abilities, increase services to the community, and we've done that. You've probably seen the new fire station in Station 63's area up in Salmon Creek, where we were able to replace a pretty old building that was not up to any kind of seismic standards to a new building that houses 2 companies plus a battalion chief. It has a training center there, which we've never had before, and it's been great for us and for the entire community. We're able to finally give back and share training opportunities with other fire districts in the City of Vancouver Fire Department that they've always been sharing with us. We've always been on the receiving end. So that's been great. And then it's in Philida, we have the new fire station. Well, the old fire station 62 got a facelift, also some seismic upgrades and a lot of health enhancements to the firefighters, including a place where they can exercise. We do have a healthy in, healthy out program where we are able to isolate some of the stuff that we run into out in the, the fires and the calls that we go on. We keep that out of the fire station with some of the new equipment we purchased. And also we found that rest is a killer of firefighters. And so we've been able to enhance the fire stations with individual dorm spaces that the crews can get some rest and isolated from the other crews. And then of course, if one of the companies gets a call in the middle of the night, the other company doesn't have to get up for that call. Even though they get up a lot already, even if we cut that in half, it's good for firefighter safety and health. And then this year, my job is to remodel Station 61 and do some of those same health and safety enhancements for the fire station here in Hazeldale. And so that is budgeted for. It's in the planning process right now with the architects. We're about ready to go to the county for permits. And we hope to get through that process this summer and be ready to go to bid at the end of the year, hopefully intending to break ground first part of next year. We'll see how everything goes with the county and the planning process. So,
Shawn,
yes.
does that new station, does it include any meeting space? Just curious, public meeting space?
That building does not have any public meeting space. It has a training classroom that we reserve for the fire service, but the Station 61 in Hazeldale, of course, does have some public meeting space, and it will, even after the remodel, still have meeting space once that's completed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Of course. And so I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for me or for the fire district. And if of course I can't answer them, I can get you the answers.
Could you clarify where District 6, where your boundaries are?
Of course, I apologize. So Fire District 6 serves the communities of Mount Vista out towards the fairgrounds, all the way down 179th Street, south into Philida, Lakeshore, Hazeldale, some of the Minnehaha area. So basically, I mean, in a nutshell, the boundaries on the north side is about 179th Street. On the south side, we dip down to as far as 39th, well, roughly in that area at 40th. And then on the east side, we go out to the Geyser area on 39th, and then over to the lake on the west side. So.
Shawn, thank you so much for giving us this little tiny bit update. I hope that everybody understands that people in Fire District 6 are here. They take care of us, and it costs us very little to take care of them. There are a whole lot of ways we can save money, but it's not going to be taking money away from the people who come. We call 911 and they're here. I mean, we're fortunate. We live really close. And so less than 3 minutes, they are here to pick people up who fall on the ground. And I just think that's one heck of a bargain.
Well, thank you, Isla. I know you've always been a supporter of the fire district, and we appreciate that. We try very hard to be good stewards of the fire district funds, the money that the citizens give to us. We understand that they're a gift to us, and we take very good care of our equipment, our personnel, our facilities. to make sure that that is represented. I'm in the logistics section. So kind of what that means is that most of the money that is spent goes through my office. And so I see what is being spent. And if it's not reasonable, it doesn't get spent. We've kind of sent it through a machine that says, is this good for the district? Is this good for the citizens? Is this good for the employees? Is this good for the greater good? And if it does not meet all those criteria, then it does not get spent. I've been very pleased with the way that we have spent money in the past. And I know that Chief Maurer is very responsible. Our current board is very responsible, and they have a very good handle on the money that's being spent. I see it literally every day.
So just one comment as far as community space, like the fire stations are a key place in the community. And I noticed several of the neighborhood associations have challenges finding meeting spaces and that sort of thing. So I'd just like to suggest in the future when we're designing fire stations that there be some flexible space that might be available for community meetings like neighborhood associations, because there's a real shortage and we don't have money to rent places. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And we completely understand that. It's difficult sometimes as well, because we will initially design a building with all of the wants and needs of the fire district.
Yeah.
Everything we can. And then of course things start getting chopped as we try to make the budget. And oftentimes that space is cut, or in the case of two of our buildings, where we had a limited footprint and we needed to do more with what we had in Philida, especially that community space was lost to just trying to operate the fire district. That's unfortunate. Yeah. But I recognize that, and we're sensitive to that.
Thank you.
Pat Montgomery, Greater Brush Prairie. I have a question. I've lived in different areas where they would sometimes call it a sin tax for something. And with the recent fireworks and the drain that does put on for services, has anyone thought of, in addition to a levy, of the fire departments adding a tax on these fireworks? Because I know so many of us were concerned about fires and different things. Has that been considered as far as supporting the fire department?
That has not been something that I have been part of any conversations about. That I also believe would be a rise to the level of the county council. And I don't know how much power they have over. I also understand that the fireworks stands are a very political thing, I guess, because of all of the different players that are involved in raising funds for Little League and this and that and the other thing. It's kind of this difficult realm to go in. But I will tell you, I was on call this year, and I haven't been for the last several years. And boy, I was shocked at the number of calls, and I've been in the business 24 years. And I was shocked at the number of calls that our fire district was going on, but not just our fire district, everybody in the county, the city, and all the other fire districts were just slammed.
I mean, even at a 5 cent per box, just to help with the staffing. And, I was very dismayed to learn that there were no tickets issued. And I know we had people that were blowing up dynamite, and we had other stuff, and they were just given warnings. And when I think about where $500 per violation, what that really could have done to support the fire department is sad. If they want to do it, fine. But, let's get some money into the places where if something goes wrong, we have you guys to, bail us out, because 4th of July is a little scary sometimes. So hopefully maybe somebody will think about because I know they're adding the public safety tax to the ballot. And so maybe they'd consider a small one on the fireworks.
Shawn?
Hi.
This is Malada Allen, Philida Neighborhood Association President.
Hi there.
And when you were talking about the space at the Fire District 6 here in Philida, I think it's Station 62.
Yes.
Can't remember. But we were told that you guys would not let us meet there because of insurance concerns and also, security concerns. But I think that we had been very, very careful about not letting, things happen. But also, we used to be able to use the meeting space over there at 179th Street that's shared by the Sheriff's Office and you. So what is the status of that particular facility?
Okay, so you mentioned Philida, and that space, since the remodel, has been used for other purposes, so there's no longer a meeting space there. But the Station 151, which is the public safety complex on 179th Street and right on the border, there is a usable space there.
It's a big, giant meeting space. Yes, we've used it for years for sheriff's board meetings as well as for the community board meetings.
Yeah, now that space is actually controlled by the fire marshal's office, the meeting room space. They do the scheduling between them and the sheriff. The fire department has little control over that, although when we ask for it, we kind of flex our muscles and try and make sure we can use it.
Of course.
especially when we were in the middle of remodels and we had literally no other place. So the best way to do that is to either contact the sheriff's office or the fire marshal's office. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I can get it for you to see if that space is available.
That would be terrific because we do have a whole bunch of different meetings that could, neighborhood associations, that could be able to maybe utilize that space again because, like I said, it is centrally located, but also it's user-friendly for the neighborhood associations, and like we are a nonprofit 501c3 and so on and so forth. But we make a lot of difference in our community, and we do provide a lot of connections. So anything you guys can do to get us back to what we used to do for about 15 years.
So I just wrote myself a note to tomorrow to get that phone number, and I'll send it up to the folks here. Mary Lee, I think probably is the right person to send that to.
Yes, I just looked it up online. I'm putting it in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Good.
The main number is 564-397-2186.
Can you do it one more time because I cannot get on a computer? It's
564-397
2186. And then I have a couple of other questions, but I'll try to limit it to two. Kristen had said that she was going to give me some more flyers because I've had quite a lot of different community stakeholders that want to know more about it, but are not computer savvy, and they also do not subscribe to newspapers. So she was going to leave those for me someplace, but would it be possible for me to pick it up at the new fire station up there in Salmon Creek?
I can definitely get them up for you tomorrow if you give me just a little bit of time to get them there. Otherwise, I know that the Hazeldale station has them at the front desk.
The Hazeldale station does? Okay, what are the open hours?
There's somebody there from 8 until 5.
8 to 5.
Plus, quite honestly, if you ring the doorbell, the firefighters are there 24/7.
Okay, alrighty. And the last but not least question, you guys used to get quote unquote donations for the life and grants for the life jackets for the Klein Line kids fishing as well as for the Klein Line swimming area. Are you still doing that, or do we have to have another fundraiser?
That is a very good question. Interestingly, I saw somebody come by today and had a life jacket that had that information on it. I was wondering the same thing. So Malata, I'm going to talk to Dave Schmidtke, our public information officer, and have him reach out to Mary Lee and let them know what the status is of those loaner stations that specifically Klein Line's our main user there.
Yes, yes. And of course, the Klein Line kids fishing, it's kind of very important for them to have life jackets for about 5,000 kids. Of course, in relays, but still.
Yeah, well, at least during,
especially on a special needs kids day when most of those kids don't know how to swim.
yes, I agree. I'm sending myself a note to do that tomorrow.
Okay. And Shawn, what's your contact info?
My contact is Shawn, SHAWN .Newberry, NEWBERRY at ccfd6.org.
FD6. Alrighty, Shawn. I am very, very thankful that you guys were able to plug in today. And thank you, Mary Lee, for letting them do that, because that is a very important, function that they have, not just to protect the entire community, but also our kids. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Malata.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Anybody else?
Well, if nothing else, thank you so much for welcoming me. This was a great group. I've learned a lot about the tax system tonight, and it's good to see many of you who I've seen over the years, but it's good to touch base with you again, and I hope to do more of that in the future. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Shawn.
Thanks,
Excellent
Shawn.
presentation.
Okay, thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
I think that Mary Lee had something she wanted to discuss with the group.
First, I'm going to go ahead and close off the recording portion of this since we've got the two presentations done. So this will be the close of our two presentations this evening for July 11th, 2022, the Neighborhood Associations Council of Clark County. Thanks for attending.